I'm Shannon.
And I'm Colleen. And this is
Pop Culture Pie,
where we sisters talk about pop culture things that have nothing to do with pie.
Yep. What's so exciting about today's episode?
We're together.
Yeah.
Normally we're not.
We sound so fake. Wow.
That's amazing.
Anyway.
We're sleepy.
It's 7:30 at night. What do we do in this show? You said that already, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you say one of us doesn't know what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah. One of us picks a topic and the other one doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
So it's a surprise.
Do you want to know what today's topic is?
Yeah, you have to say the line.
Today we're serving up a slice of the Lightning Thief musical.
Ooh.
Are you so shocked?
I'm so shocked.
Because I made you listen to it and I have the Lightning Thief right next to me right now.
I'm so shocked. We talked about Percy Jackson last time.
Yeah, so I was gonna not do it, but then I didn't think of anything else. So that's what we're gonna talk about. But I'm gonna try to focus on the musical. So the Lightning Thief musical, for anyone who's listening and didn't necessarily listen to the last episode, The Lightning Thief is the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Riordan, and it's about half-bloods who are half human, mortal, half god. And the main character is Percy Jackson, and he is Poseidon's son. And the first book is when he's 12. So The Lightning Thief musical is a musical that recently ran off-Broadway and is based on the first book. What are you looking at?
Your face?
You're looking at my pimples.
Sorry, I'm easily distracted.
So, okay, let me open my notes. So first of all, I'm gonna spoil The Lightning Thief. I figure it's been out for 12 years. The musical is the same basic plot of the show. And I haven't seen the musical. I've only listened to the soundtrack and seen clips and stuff. But,
I think 12 years is long enough time.
yeah, if you don't want to be spoiled, then you can stop listening, or you should have read it 12 years ago. But you should definitely read it, because it's a really good book and a really good series.
And then you should come back and listen.
Yes. Or listen to this and then go read it. And also listen to the musical, because that's kind of the whole point of this, is please listen to the musical. It's really good.
And tell your friends to listen to this. I care less about you listening to the musical. I care a lot about
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Listening to me.
So, the play, here's a little history of its creation. It started as a 1-hour musical in 2014 by the company Theater Works USA as part of its free theater series. And then it went on national tour. And then in January of this year, 2017, it was announced that a new version would be produced with a new score and an updated and expanded script. And it ran off-Broadway in the Lucille Lortel Theater from March 23rd to May 6th. The music and lyrics are by Rob Rakicki. And the book is by Joe Trass. I think that's how you pronounce those names.
I don't know.
Tracz. Such a weird last name.
I don't know.
So there are 7 actors in this show, which seems impossible when you're listening to it, but they all double up, except, of course, for Percy and Annabeth. Annabeth is the main girl in the series. She's awesome. She's a daughter of Athena. So, in the off-Broadway production, what are you doing?
I know him.
You know the guy who played Luke. You're taking this phone out of my hand, and I'm like, she knows one of these people.
I think so. That name looks really familiar.
Well, why didn't you figure this out sooner so that I could get free tickets to the Lightning Thief? All right. James Hayden Rodriguez.
I know him.
How do you know him?
I don't remember.
Are you friends on Facebook?
I think so.
We listened to this whole soundtrack twice. She's friends with him on Facebook.
So, fun fact, everyone. James Hayden Rodriguez, who plays Luke, Aries, and others, we went to college together.
Sissy.
Okay. I don't know if we ever did a show together, but we must have had a class together or something. I know him.
So let's just skip to James Hayden Rodriguez then. He plays Luke Castellan. I actually don't know if that's how you pronounce Luke's last name, and I read this book 10 years ago. And Aries. And I'm also pretty sure he plays Gabe, who is Percy's stepdad. But he's not... Gabe isn't in the soundtrack, so I'm not sure. But from what I saw on, looking on one of the actress's Instagrams, she's just looking at his Facebook now. So the other actors in the play are Chris McCarroll, who plays Percy Jackson, and the funniest thing that I know about Chris McCarroll is that his Twitter and Instagram username is his name, except instead of the first C in McCarroll, it's a Z, so it's Chris Ms. Carroll. And I think that's really funny. Other people in it, George Salazar plays Grover, who is a satyr and Percy's best friend and protector. He also plays Mr. D, who is Dionysus and the camp director at not at the Lightning Thief, at Camp Half-Blood, where the Half-Bloods live. Kristen Stokes plays Annabeth, and she doesn't double as any characters except that I think she's just a student in the crowd at the beginning of the show. Carrie Compere plays Percy's mom, Sally. One of the kids, Selena, Charon, the ferryman, the oracle, and others. Jonathan Raviv plays Mr. Brunner, who is also Chiron, who is a centaur, and he's the activities director at Camp Half-Blood, and he's Percy's teacher. He also plays Poseidon and I think Hades and other random characters. And then Sarah Beth Pfeiffer plays Mrs. Pfeiffer. That makes sense. Sarah Beth Pfeiffer plays Mrs. Dodds, who is an evil monster in the very first chapter of the book, in the very first song of the play, and Clarice, who's another one of the Half-Bloods, and others. Are you just gonna look through his whole Facebook now?
Well, now... yeah.
Because you're trying to figure out how you really know him?
Well, yeah. I wanted to see if, yeah.
Well, go back to the top.
No.
And click See Friendship. And then that'll show you every time you've ever interacted with him.
Yeah, but that might just mean that, we,
became friends.
And we wrote on each other's birthdays or something.
It might be helpful.
We have no posts in common.
So you guys became friends.
Yeah.
But you have 121 mutual friends.
We went to the same school.
You're friends since July 2008. Well, that's funny.
Isn't that funny?
So, anyway. I wish there was more to that line of discussion.
That I know him?
Yeah.
I've met him.
But you don't remember how. You just know his name.
We probably had a class or something together.
Yeah.
I've also met the guy who is the Middle Eastern bad guy in Iron Man.
I've met him too. But you, like, worked with him. I met him after seeing the show
I know.
that you did.
I met the original Pumbaa on Broadway. My husband has met Glenn Close. He said she's very nice, but when she messes up, she swears like a sailor.
I have the physical copy of the Lightning Thief soundtrack, and I was going to read the summary that they have in here. Look, there's your Facebook friend. Okay. I guess it's kind of long. I'll read it anyway. Act 1. The Half-Blood, parentheses, half-god, half-mortal, children of the Greek gods, introduce us to Percy Jackson, whose school field trip takes a turn for the weird when his substitute teacher turns into a fury and tries to kill him. He survives but gets expelled. At home, Percy is berated by his stepdad Gabe, but defended by his mother Sally, who takes him to a beach and confesses she's been keeping a secret about his real father. Her confession is interrupted by Percy's best friend Grover, and by a Minotaur. The Minotaur kills Sally and knocks out Percy, who has a dream where a man in a Hawaiian shirt gives him a seashell. Percy wakes in a strange place called Camp Half-Blood, a sanctuary for the children of the Greek gods. He meets cranky camp director Mr. D, and fellow half-bloods Luke, son of Hermes, and Annabeth, daughter of Athena. He learns that Grover is a satyr, and his former teacher, Mr. Brunner, is the legendary centaur Chiron, who tells him he's a half-blood too, though his father is unknown. During a deadly game of Capture the Flag, Percy fends off camp bully Clarice, and celebrates with his new friends around the campfire, where he discovers he's not the only half-blood with parent issues. But his sense of belonging is short-lived. When his father is revealed to be the sea god Poseidon, Percy becomes a suspect in the theft of Zeus's lightning bolt. Its disappearance has Olympus on the brink of war. The oracle warns him that the only way to clear his name and stop the war is to go on a quest to find the real thief. Percy angrily laments another failed attempt to be a good kid, but Luke deduces that the thief is Hades and tells Percy that, if he goes to the underworld, he might be able to bring his mom back from the dead. With Annabeth and Grover by his side, Percy leaves the safety of camp for the danger and adventure of a killer quest.
Ooh.
Hey, stop reading what you're going to talk about and listen to me.
I am listening to you.
So that's Act 1. So I figured we'll stop there and we can talk about Act 1. And mostly what I was going to talk about was, like, the differences from the book.
Okay.
So Percy has this dream of Poseidon, a man with a Hawaiian shirt. That doesn't happen in the book. I've been rereading the book. I didn't make it all the way through before recording this because I read slow. But you recently reread them all. When does he first encounter his dad? Because that I don't remember.
He doesn't encounter his dad until the end.
Yeah.
But he meets different like water nymphs.
Yeah.
He talks to a specific type of nymph when they're in St. Louis. And
that's right, because I remember that he thinks, like, it looks like his mom.
Yeah. And he talks to, like, the former god of the sea. They're the titan of the sea, you know, an older god of the sea at one point when they're in Los Angeles. So, like, it's the Nereid that he meets in the Mississippi River in St. Louis that gives him it's 3 pearls.
Yeah.
That he uses in the place of the seashell in this story.
I was listening to the play and I was like, it's not seashells. Like, what is it? So yeah, it's pearls. Because at the end he uses this seashell as a portal, but they use the pearls as portals.
Yeah, he's got 3 pearls.
Well, not portals, but they just kind of transport them.
They're like put into bubbles.
Yes.
And the bubbles rise them back up to the ocean.
So really, like, everything's done much quicker than in a book, no matter what. But the other kind of big difference in the first act to me, and really in the whole show, but he mostly is in the first act, is Luke, your Facebook friend. And so in the book, Luke is, like, the friendliest person alive, and he walks out, and he's blonde, and, like, has his orange t-shirt, and is like, welcome to camp, and stuff. In the play, he walks out, and he's in all black, But his black shirt, like, looks like it has blood splatters on it, and he's got his dagger, and he's all moody, and he's like, oh, camp sucks. I mean, he doesn't say that, but he's like, this is terrible, am I right? I guess we just gotta deal with it. Let me go lead a really horrible campfire song about how much we hate our parents, and oh my god, it's like I'm gonna be the bad guy. That's the thing with this musical, is you're like, they know that you've read the book and that you know Luke is the bad guy. Like, they're not hiding that. And then he plays all the other bad guys. He plays Ares and he plays the bad stepfather, so it's like, there it is. I wonder if Luke's gonna be the third bad guy in this. It's the same actor. And then the interesting thing is, so I just got to, in the book, rereading, you can look through that and look at pictures. I just got to the part in the book where Percy is given the quest to go get the lightning bolt back. And Chiron, not Karen, the difference. Mm-hmm. Chiron gives him the quest. Well, he says, go speak to the oracle. We'll see what the oracle says. And Percy's like, this is what the oracle said. And Chiron's like, okay, well, I think that Hades stole the bolt, and it is in the underworld. So that's where you have to go. So in the play, I mean, obviously there are scenes that I don't know because I just listened to the soundtrack, I didn't see it. But in the play, it's Luke, and I mean, that summary makes it sound like it's just Luke, who's like, hey, I think it's Hades, and it's in the underworld, and hey, your mom's there, too, because she died. And that's the whole, like, I'm gonna get my mom back is mostly in Percy's head in the narration of the book. But, like, I think Luke says it.
I know him.
I know. Isn't that funny?
But obviously don't know his singing voice because I didn't recognize it when we were...
Well, and everyone in the show is, like, doing different voices lately. But so, basically, Luke gives him the quest in the play. Which I thought was interesting. But, like, makes sense because Luke has a motivation to get rid of Percy.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, like, part of Luke and Kronos' master plan.
Yeah.
Anyways, so...
So let me read Act 2. The quest gets off to a rocky start when the trio's bus explodes and they end up lost in New Jersey, where they narrowly survive an encounter with Auntie M, aka Medusa. The incident fuels the growing tension between Percy and Annabeth until Annabeth shares the reason she has to be tough. With a newfound understanding and some train tickets courtesy of a helpful squirrel, the trio is back on track, facing Echidna. Is that how it's pronounced?
Echidna?
Or Echidna?
I don't know.
It's probably a joke in the book. Because every time some weird pronounced name comes up, he's like, what? Like enchiladas? And they're like, no, like echidna. That's why I feel like it might be a ch. Mother of monsters. Ares, god of war, and an eerie Las Vegas hotel on their trip across the country. As they near the underworld, Percy has a troubling dream, where he sees the real lightning thief and overhears the name Talia. Grover reveals that Talia was Zeus's daughter and Luke and Annabeth's friend, who the gods let die. The trio enters the underworld, which turns out to be a record company, and the fairy woman Charon tells them they're now trapped. Percy's winged shoes, a gift from Luke, nearly pulls him into Tartarus, the pit where the god's father, Kronos, is imprisoned. Annabeth deduces that Kronos wanted Percy's backpack and opens it to discover Zeus's missing bolt. Hades catches them and proposes a trade, the bolt in exchange for their freedom. And Sally's. Quote, what has your father ever done for you? But Percy finds the seashell from his dream and realizes it's a gift from his dad. It creates a portal allowing the trio to escape and confront the real traitor, Ares, who Percy defeats with a tidal wave. He is rewarded with a visit from Poseidon, who restores Sally's life on behalf of the grateful gods. Percy's parents give him a choice: stay at camp year-round or return home when summer ends. On the last day of summer, Percy discovers that the real thief was Luke, who hoped to destroy the gods as revenge for Talia's death. Luke attacks Percy and escapes, but Annabeth saves Percy's life. Percy realizes dark times are ahead, but knows that Luke is right, that the gods have made mistakes. He tells the Half-Bloods that they can't stay at camp waiting for their parents to fix the world. They need to go out and do it themselves, so bring on the monsters. That's the last song, Bring on the Monsters. So there's a lot of differences in Act 2.
Yeah, well, they do
In the
condense
plot.
about a third of the book, or condense about a third of the book into one song.
Yes. That's the meeting the mother of monsters, meeting Ares, and the Las Vegas Hotel is all one song, Drive, which is a great song, but that is a third of the book. But it, like, works in the play. It's not, like, a bad thing. It's just funny. And also, I think, like a lot of what happens in that third of the book acts as setup for later books, which you're obviously not going to do more musicals.
Yeah.
So, like, the whole Lotus Hotel, it's a hotel where you go in and you're there for, like, hundreds of years and it only feels like a few days. So in the book, they stay there and a couple days do pass.
Mm-hmm. They think they're there a few hours and
Yes.
it's a couple days pass.
So in the musical, they walk in, Percy's like, oh, let's stay here. And Annabeth is like, are you kidding? And she explains, like, the Lotus myth. And then Percy's like, that's ridiculous. And he stops the woman and he's like, how long have you been here? And she's like, my brother and I just arrived yesterday, May 1st, 1939. And in the lyrics, she's credited as Bianca, and Bianca and her brother Nico are major characters later in the series who were in this hotel. But they don't meet them when they go to the hotel in the first book. But just that, like, that was there as a, like, nod to later things. Later in the same song, they mention the Hoover Dam and going to the Hoover Dam, and they make the Dam snack bar joke, which is also a later book. It's the same book as Bianca and Nico.
Yeah.
But that's just a funny joke. But it's like, well, obviously we're not going to do sequels to this musical, because sequels to a musical would be weird. So they make those little in-jokes. Other things that are different. Grover reveals the whole story of the tree on the hill and Talia and all that. In the book, he does that when they're still at camp at the beginning, but he doesn't explain that it was him and Annabeth and Luke.
Yeah.
I don't remember when he does that in the book, just later
on.
So that's all revealed in the book, but just, like, spread out more. But that makes sense because you're reading the book and, like, they talk about the trees several times when he gets to camp.
Yeah.
Whereas in the play, you don't see it. So, the ending. That was kind of something the thing that stood out to me the most when I read this plot summary. Is Percy tells the Half-Bloods that they can't stay at camp waiting for their parents to fix the world. They need to go out and do it themselves, so bring on the monsters. Like, that...
That's not a thing.
That's not a thing. Now, it makes sense for the musical, because, again, you're not going to make sequels. So it makes sense for it to be a whole, like, rallying cry at the end, like, we're not going to stay here anymore, and we're going to go out and fix the world.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works.
Well, and it's, Percy does say, like, he agrees with Luke in that way of, like,
and he
the
decides
gods
not
have
to
made mistakes.
stay at camp the whole year round.
Yeah, but he's like, the gods are still our parents, and, like, I'm not gonna turn evil because I'm pissed at them.
Well, and that's like we talked about in the last episode. The books are about, like, complicated relationships with parents.
Yeah.
And so it's like... And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the music of the show more later, but, like, Percy's solo song is Good Kid. And it's all about, like, I try to be a good kid and a good son. And this is right after he receives the prophecy from the oracle, so he feels like, I'm going to mess up and whatever. And so he knows who his dad is now. At the end of the musical, when he finds out Luke is the traitor and Luke's going to kill him, Luke sings a version of Good Kid. But instead, it's like, it doesn't pay to be a good kid, it doesn't pay to be a good son. And it's really showing, like, if something had gone a little bit different, Percy could be just like Luke. Or Luke could be just like Percy. And it's just that, basically, that Luke's quest went wrong. And Percy's quest worked. Like, Luke lost a friend, and Percy didn't lose anybody yet. He got his mom back.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, I mean, if you go into the history of the backstory you find out in the book, and you find out more in the books about the backstory. Luke's mom had basically gone insane.
Yeah.
So it was, it says in that, like, oh, he blames them for Talia's death, where it's a lot more than that. I mean, it's like, yes, Talia died, but, like, his mom was crazy.
Yeah.
And he had to live with her, and, Hermes, he only met him once, and so there was a lot more, like, pent-up resentment.
And then, like, he had his own quest after he got to camp where he went...
He went to get one of the apples, but it's the same quest that Hercules does, and so he was pissed that, like, he was just given some repeat quest.
And he failed. And he has, like, a scar on his face, which none of that is in the show, I don't think.
But you do find out later, too, that, like, obviously what had happened to Luke had been prophesized in some way. Hermes knew what was, to some extent... what was going to happen. And because he has a line, you see in a flashback of, like, he says something like, oh, maybe we can send you on a quest before, and then he stops him, and that gets into the whole, like, trouble with prophecies, which we talked a little bit about in the other episode about, like, there's Percy Jackson's Greek gods and Greek heroes, where Percy retells the Greek myths. And he does a repeating joke, because a lot of the hero stories start with somebody went to see the oracle, and by going and seeing the oracle and getting a prophecy, that almost always leads to their downfall, because then they try to, like, go against the, try to make the prophecy not come true, which just makes the prophecy come true. And, it's the time and fate and...
So, every Percy Jackson book has a prophecy. You get a prophecy before you go on a quest.
And you have to have a prophecy to go on a quest.
Yes. And they go on a quest in every book. Which is kind of funny, because in the first book, they're like, nobody's been on a quest in years. And then Percy goes on 5 quests in a row. And then they go on a whole quest for another series. So... there's prophecy in every book, and then there's the Great Prophecy, which is revealed in the last book. So basically, Percy's super special because he's a child of the big 3 gods. That's Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon, who, after World War II, made a deal that they weren't going to have any more kids.
Because their kids caused World War II. Because Adolf Hitler was the son of Hades, Winston Churchill was the son of Poseidon, and... who the president?
Yeah, whoever the president was. America.
I know, we're like...
Zeus.
Was the son of Zeus. Who's the president? FDR.
I'll edit that in. Like we knew the whole time.
The president, so FDR, is the son of Zeus.
And that's, like, how it's initially explained is just like, oh, well, they caused World War II, so they decided not to have any more kids. Because they are, like, more powerful half-bloods. But it also turns out that they got this great prophecy, which said, like, said something about one of their children, and that the world was going to end, whatever.
Yeah, one of their children would make a choice that would decide the fate of the gods.
And of course it turns out that they were all, like, misreading the prophecy a little bit.
That's how you do.
That's how all the prophecies
And in the end, it turns out, I guess Hades didn't technically break their promise.
No,
but he stuck his children in that hotel so they could show up later.
Yeah, so Talia was a daughter of Zeus, so Zeus broke the promise, 17 years before the first book starts. And spoiler alert, Talia stops being a tree eventually. But she's not 17. It's like, oh, the way you've aged as a tree makes you slightly older than Percy, so now who's gonna be the prophecy? Because it's all when they turn 16. And Percy's 12 in the first book. Spoiler alert, again, Talia becomes the hunter of Artemis, which makes her stay the same age forever. And so then it's like, oh, it's Percy, okay.
She's like, yeah, I don't want it to be me, so I'm gonna become an immortal who doesn't age.
And Percy's like, thanks.
Yay for me.
So they also meet Bianca and Nico, who are children of Hades, but, I mentioned 1939 earlier. they were stuck into the hotel. So Percy, or Hades, didn't technically break the promise, but he was like, well, let's not let the other two find out I already have some kids out there.
Let's just hide them.
Let's just put them in here. It'll be fine.
And I'll get them out when it's convenient for me.
Yeah.
Like when, now they could be important.
Yeah.
Now they could be useful.
So, the prophecy in the first book, I was going to talk about that because it's slightly different in the play. So, the book, it is, you shall go west and face the God who has turned. You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. In the musical, which of course they're singing it in the musical, it is, you shall go west and face the treacherous Lord. You shall find what was stolen and see it restored. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you friend, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. So they just changed those first two lines slightly, and I was wondering why.
I know, because they still rhyme.
Yeah, and so the second line means the same thing. The first line is changed from the God who has turned to the treacherous Lord. Mm-hmm. And of course, the God who has turned, they think refers to Hades, but it actually refers to Ares. And I don't think they ever, in the play, go back over the prophecy and be like, oh, that's what that all meant. So I just thought it was interesting that they changed it to treacherous Lord.
You shall go west and face the treacherous Lord, I'm pretty positive has less syllables.
Yeah.
So when you're singing it, even if you look at, Shannon has typed it out, and the three lines are all the same length, the first three lines and almost the fourth line are all the same length.
In the musical.
Whereas when you look at it in the book, they're not. And so I think it's just, in a rhythm sense... to make, lines need to be the same length. So, you shall go west and face the treacherous Lord is shorter than you shall go west and face the God who is turned. And then it's just rhyming after that. It's stolen and see it returned versus restored just is turned.
And then you shall be betrayed by one who calls you friend instead of a friend.
Yeah, it's just all about syllables.
And the last line's the same.
Yeah. It's a syllable thing.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
It is just interesting.
Because you could, lines and songs don't have to have the same syllables, but they
it's a rhythm thing.
Yeah. So,
I do musicals for a living.
Yeah, we're theater people. Not really me, but,
I don't sing. I work backstage. I nod when people talk about singing.
Yeah. Because I was looking up, the prophecy and kind of what each line means. So, you shall go west and face the God who has turned, or the treacherous Lord, they think it's Hades, but it's Ares. You shall find what was stolen and see it restored. That's the lightning bolt. But, I was on Wikipedia and it points out, which I forgot about this, Hades' helm.
Yes, Hades' helm of darkness, which is his helmet of invisibility, is also stolen, but he doesn't tell anybody.
Because he's moody and whatever. He's like, whatever, let them kill each other. So that's not in the musical, as far as I know. No, it's not, because, it's not. But it's not, that important. It's just kind of more fleshing out of Hades. In the musical, I'm pretty sure Hades only appears for, a second, and he's just get out of my underworld, or I'll kill you. And then they're like, okay, seashell.
Well, and again, that's because in the books, Hades becomes he's really one of the gods they interact with the most.
And he's a three-dimensional character. It's like we talked about how Hades is turned into a villain a lot, but he's not really a villain in the Percy Jackson books.
No.
But none of the gods are really good guys.
No, they're selfish creatures.
Yeah, Poseidon's usually alright, but that's because he's the main character's dad. Apollo's usually alright, but that's because he's the main character of a whole series.
But he's incredibly self-centered.
Yes, his whole point is, like, he's self-centered. But he's not like, I'm gonna kill everyone.
Yeah, that's just not his shtick.
Yeah. So, it varies. You know who's good? Hestia.
Hestia is always
She
good.
doesn't do much, but she's like, man, everyone else, they were the worst. Yes, so that's treacherous lord, one whose turn you shall find what is stolen. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you friend, that's Luke. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. And that's like, he doesn't save his mom, but, like, well, in the musical, Poseidon gets her back. Does Hades, like, give her back in the book?
because it's Hades has taken her...
Because she doesn't die.
She doesn't die. Hades has, like, stolen her because he thinks Percy stole his Helm of Darkness. And he tells Percy that if Percy gives him the helmet back, he'll give him back his mom.
Yes.
And so he does.
And in the book, it is, like, everyone's convinced she's dead.
Yeah.
But I remember reading it for the first time and be like, she vanished in golden shimmering light, guys. Like, Percy, why haven't you told anyone that? And they might be like, that doesn't sound like death.
Yeah.
It sounds like something else happened there. But that's in the play, it's like she died and she's in the underworld and we're gonna get her soul back. Like, as far as they're concerned, that's it. And they do that. I mean, Poseidon gives her back and I'm kind of like, that's against the rules.
That's a big thing in Greek mythology. People die and they stay dead. That's one of
the problems with the musical. I'm like, that's against the rules. That's not how it works. Poseidon would just do that. He wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, that's a whole big thing in the books. That's like the whole point of the first book is the gods can't touch each other or each other's realms.
Yeah, so that's like gods can't steal things from each other. They have to make their children steal things from each other.
Yeah, that's why they think Percy stole the bolt.
Yeah, because they think that, like, Poseidon was like, hey, steal the thing, and I'll take over the universe and shit.
So, yeah, like, I just read the scene where Chiron's giving him the quest and everything, and Percy's like, well, why doesn't a god just go into the underworld and do it? And it's like, no, a god can't go there unless Hades is like, yeah, come on in, which he's not gonna do, because Hades is like, please leave me alone. It's kind of Hades' whole thing. It's like, please just let me.
Poor Hades
sit with
is
my
like,
ghosts
you
and
just,
be sad.
I got stuck ruling the underworld, so just leave me alone.
Just let me do my job.
Just let me do my job, and I stole this pretty lady.
And my brothers are just fighting all the time.
They're just stupid, and I just don't want to be a part of it. Which
Yeah.
he really doesn't, because then even when you get to, like, the last book in the series, and it's, like, the final battle, Hades is like, psh, I'm not fighting.
Yeah.
Everyone's mean to me. And the kids have to go and be like,
Please.
you should come fight. And he's got Persephone and Demeter in the underworld with him, which is pretty funny because Demeter's like this mean mother-in-law and is like, "Arr," and he's like, you're better off down here. And she's like, it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another, going back to kind of music. This isn't so much a difference as like an enhancement, is, so in the book and in the musical, the entrance to the underworld is a record company. DOA Records. So in the book, it's pretty much they go in there, they like pay the fee or whatever, and they go down into the underworld. And it's like basic underworld. It's, you know, Black Rivers and Three-Headed Dog and whatever. In the musical, it's like the biggest musical sequence of the show because they really took like this is a record company and ran with it. So it's like the ferryman is this woman and she's singing, and DOA stands for Dead on Arrival.
Which I will say I did not make that connection until we listened to the musical.
Yeah, and it's like it's like a rock song and they mention all these dead musical artists who were there. It's kind of gruesome. There's like one point where it's like a boys' choir who died on the way to sing at the Vatican, and Percy's like, that's horrible, they're children, and she's like, yeah, but their voices will never sound better, and then you hear them singing, and it's like, this is terrible, but it's really funny, because it's like, this, like, fun underworld. So, yeah, that's really good. And that's one of those things where I was like, that is, like, the difference between the musical and the movie. Is that the musical took the, like, funny tone of the book and the, like, it's a record company and Poseidon is in Hawaiian shirts and those funny little things and ran with it. And that's what the movie didn't do.
No.
The movie, like, made everything really, like, Greek. They're all wearing togas. It's so annoying.
They're in normal clothes at points, but they're not in the right normal clothes.
They're in dramatic black, were really cool clothes.
But if anything, it actually makes the Hades part too silly. Because isn't Hades, like, Russell Brand and Persephone's...
And Persephone
Rosario
shouldn't be there.
Dawson, yeah, and she's not there in the first book. And it's actually, like, she's... crafty and then Grover stays because she's pretty. Like, that whole part is made into, like,
the
sillier
stupid.
than it is.
So, yeah, so it's like the musical took the kind of, I don't want to say lighthearted. Like, I don't know how to describe this comedic element, but they did it right. Even though, you know, they changed various things, but it worked better. Okay, really the only other thing I was going to say is, like, Annabeth. I feel like the character of Annabeth was just a little bit different. Not as different as in the movie. But, so Annabeth has this whole song in the musical that's My Grand Plan. And Annabeth's whole, like, shtick, they each have, like, a thing in the musical. And Percy's is, like, I'm gonna be a good kid. And Grover's is, like, I'm gonna protect my friends. And then Annabeth's is, like, I'm not gonna be invisible. And so, in the books, she has this hat that her mom, Athena, gave her that turns her invisible. And it's just kind of, like, a useful tool that she has. But in the musical, they turn it into a whole metaphor of, like, oh, my mom gave me this hat that turns me invisible. Like, great. And it's, like, she feels like she goes unnoticed, which kind of makes sense with Annabeth in the book. Like, she really wants to go on a quest. She really wants to, like, have her time to shine and prove herself. But it's just, like, the musical did it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And it also makes sense that she can't use her hat she doesn't use her hat in the musical, because how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
So it was, like, I guess, part of a way to explain why she doesn't have the hat, because it's like, oh, I don't like the hat in the musical. But I just thought that was interesting, that they made Annabeth's whole thing, like, I don't want to be invisible.
Yeah, because in the books, Annabeth doesn't really have a problem with her godly parent.
No.
Like, she's fine with Athena. She has problems with her her mortal parent and her stepmom.
Which comes up in the musical.
Yeah.
But
she mentions that. But they all sing about their difficulties with their godly parent, which they don't all necessarily have deep-seated issues with their godly parent like how Luke does, They're not like, godly parents aren't really excellent parents, and they're not really available, but, they're not like, they don't beat you. Yeah.
That's like, Luke wants all the gods to die. He has serious issues, but I think the rest of them are more just like, well, kind of sucks.
Yeah. But I kind of got superpowers out of it.
Yeah.
And if you're not, a child of the big three, you're less likely to get eaten by something.
Yeah, that's like, Annabeth explains, like, some people stay all year round, but, like, children of Aphrodite and Demeter, like, aren't going to get killed because they don't have, like, superpowers. Like, I can make plants. Like,
I can make
look
plants
really
grow.
pretty.
I'm really pretty, and people like to give me shit, So it is like, the more powerful the god, and especially, I guess, the more violent the god, God in a way, like, the more monsters come and attack you.
Yeah.
But if you're the child of, a relatively peaceful god, and it's like, man, I grow plants. Not that that's not cool if you like plants.
Yeah, I mean,
and
hey,
stuff.
in the Apollo series, the other main character is a child of Demeter.
Yeah.
And she's awesome.
And she is cool. But even Apollo says he hasn't seen a child of Demeter that powerful in a really long time.
Yeah.
But, Percy has, like, managed, because you just, like, monsters come after you the older you get, and so, you know, Percy's, like, the most powerful half-blood seen in a long time, you know, until, of course, like, Talia stops being a tree, and Nico can, like, raise dead things and stuff, and...
As you do.
As you do. He's moody because he's, you know, like 80 years old while being 11.
So I made a list of, like, what's good about this show. The music's pretty good. I mean, you listen to the soundtrack. What did you think?
It was fun. It was very upbeat. And, yeah, I don't remember it super well.
That's
I'm going to be real.
Then I was like, the actors all seem pretty good. Especially considering there's only 7 of them.
Yeah, that's... Show. You wouldn't, by listening to it, be like, man, there's only 7 people.
Yeah, well, like, because Drive, the one where they cover a third of the book, there's a ton of characters in that song. Like, for 1 or 2 lines. But it's like, those are the same 4 people. Just over and over again.
Putting different hats on.
Yeah. Medusa is a man. I'm pretty sure.
Whatevs.
Like, well, and then, like, they... turned the ferryman Charon into a woman. And then she's also the Oracle and Sally Jackson. And then she's black, so, like, diversity, because she plays Percy's mom, but it's just, like, whatever.
Well, James Hayden Rodriguez, who I know...
Yes.
...is, you know...
Hispanic of some kind
of some sort. And
dark-skinned.
Dark-skinned is not a white, blonde guy.
Yeah.
Everybody's white in the first Percy Jackson series.
I mean, it's not said, but
it's
you're
not
like,
said,
probably.
But, you know, Luke's blonde, so he's white.
In the movies, they made Grover black, which was good.
Which is cool. I'm all for that. So in my mind, Grover's black.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a mythological creature, so...
It's a really,
he can be whatever. And then in the second series, they're like, diversity!
Yeah.
And it's like every race you can imagine.
I wrote Chris McCarroll is wonderful.
My phone keeps going off.
Well, tell Mom to shut up.
Mom wants to talk to Shannon.
Phone. Chris McCarroll is wonderful, and he's the best Percy, like, ever. I mean, there's only been 2. And the guy in the movie was Logan Lerman. He was fine. I can't separate him from the bad movie. But Chris McCarroll is a good Percy. I wrote the characters and story, but that's just kind of the book.
I like the book.
But they adapted it well, basically.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, the, like, costumes, and they use a lot of puppetry for, like, the monsters, and that all seems to be good and cool. Mm-hmm. And that's, like, in the movie, they just made Percy, like, 16 or whatever.
Yeah.
He was a teenager, because Logan Lerman was obviously a teenager. In the musical, I don't think they ever say, like, he's 12. But he says, like, 6 schools in 6 years. He mentions, like, Nancy Boba Fett was bullying the first graders. So it's like, he's 12.
Yeah.
And Chris McCarroll is not 12. I know I've looked up his age. I think he's my age or a couple years older or something. Like, he's in his 20s.
There's a lot of, I mean, with theater, there's a greater suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Like, in... you know, you go see theater and you don't expect it to be real or to look super real.
Yeah.
Like, they're on a stage. They're not actually going places. You know, scenery can be really complicated or be really simple. You know, actors play multiple characters almost always, you know. And you're willing to accept things not being super realistic, you know. People are more willing to accept... you know, races not necessarily lining up parent and child because, you know, it's theater and it's just not
and
the
I think
same.
They did a good job of acting young and, from what I've seen of the costumes, like, dressing them kind of young. That I don't feel like I look at them or listen to them and be like, okay, but that sounds like... a 25-year-old.
I mean, I assumed they were all in their 20s because that's, you know, you're not going to cast children if you don't have to because
well, then
children are a pain.
It applies to movies, too. Like, you can't have that many children. I mean, you can. Matilda the musical proves that you can have a lot of children if you want to.
If you really, really
but
want
it's like,
to.
it's hard because there are child labor laws, which, as there should be. And it's hard because kids grow faster, so they can't stick around for as long. I mean, the Lightning Thief musical was a couple months, so it wouldn't have been a problem,
I think with the suspension of disbelief, too, it's easy to read a book and be like, yeah, 12-year-olds did that. But if you're watching a movie and you are watching 12-year-olds do it, you might be like, they look really little.
Yeah, they're babies.
Because, when you suddenly look at a 12-year-old, they're like, man, they look really little. But you're reading about them and it's kind of like whatever. And if theoretically you read them when you were 12, you'd be like, oh, cool. But if you were watching a movie, you're going to be like, these kids are too young to be doing this shit.
So then I wrote down, like, what's quote-unquote bad. And the biggest thing for me, which doesn't affect listening to the soundtrack, but from what I've seen, the set is, like, weird. So it's, like, scaffolding and then some Greek columns. And then, and a lot of plays do this. It's, like, one set, especially a play like this, which is, like, a road trip for most of it. So then when they, like, are in a car or whatever, it's, like, various kinds of carts, and, like, they wheel out, like, really short Greek column things. Like a Greek column that's been broken off. And it kind of, like, I look at it and I'm like, I see how you think this would work in theory, but then it doesn't. Like, when I watch stuff, I'm like, it just, like, what is it? Is it like a bunch of scaffolding on a Greek building that's being, like, fixed? I don't know, because that's kind of what it looks like, but then why is it that? And I was thinking it should have played more off of, like, a camp. It should have looked more like a camp. Because that's not really what it looks like.
I mean, yeah, that's just trying to be suggestive with a theme.
Yeah. And that's, I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't really have a theme. It's not like, the Hamilton set is kind of like, it looks like a backstage thing. Like, you can look up the Hamilton set. And I mean, it's not, I don't even think, like, the Hamilton set is the most amazing thing ever. And obviously Hamilton had more money than the Lightning Thief musical. I mean, at the very basic, Hamilton was on Broadway, Lightning Thief musical was not. But, like, the whole Hamilton set, like, works together. It looks kind of like ship stuff. And it's got, like, stairs that go up and down. It's got a lot of, like, ropes and rigging and stuff. So it kind of looks like backstage or, like, a dock or something. But that's this. I'm like, I don't know what it's supposed to look like. Because it just looks like scaffolding around Greek columns. And I'm like, I don't know why. And then they put, like, a Camp Half-Blood banner up sometimes. And it's like, I feel like you could have done something cooler.
Yeah, because I don't know, other than scaffolding suggesting modern times, like, what does that accomplish? Do they go up there?
Yeah, they do.
So that's trying to create levels.
Which is good.
Yeah, levels are important.
I was trying to think of, like, what better set would I have done? Mm-hmm. And I'm no set designer, but I was like, what if it was, like, a playground? And there was, like, a slide. And then, like, a ladder, but, like, using those to go up and down and stuff.
Yeah.
And at least that's, like, you know what it is. This, I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Hey, look, I found a picture of the model.
Yeah, so then there are these two boxes on the sides, and that's where the orchestra is. Mm. I mean, it's not like a full orchestra, but the band. I think, like, the kind of cart things they used as, like, the vehicles, like, that's all fine. Because they ride in a bunch of different vehicles in one song, and it makes sense to just use, like, the same things over and over again. And I think all the props and stuff kind of sit on the side of the stage under these boxes, these elevated boxes where the band is. And I think that's cool, just to have everything on stage, especially when it's 7 people, like, running around. You're all just gonna move the stuff around. I'm all for, like, shows where the actors have to move stuff.
I'm all for shows where the actors have to move stuff.
Yeah, where the actors have to do work. I mean, of course, actors are doing work, but...
Physical labor.
We're techies. Hey, it's that guy you're Facebook friends with.
I know him!
So, yeah, I just think, like, the set's weird. And that's, I guess, my biggest criticism. Look, that's a picture of 7 people. That's the whole show. Isn't that weird?
That's 6 people.
Okay, 6 people?
Learn to count.
The guy you're Facebook friends with isn't on there.
Is that Chiron or Kieran?
Yes.
He just has a mop sticking out of his butt? Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either, but, like, I don't really know. Because he does have to, like, stand up out of the wheelchair. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, I did wonder about that listening to it.
There's a lot of, like, minimalist stuff, which makes sense for any musical. I mean, you think about Hamilton, it's not like, they change costumes for everything and whatever.
No.
Musicals that take place over a lot of time or go over a lot of distance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I read that, and then I was like... Some of the writing, there's some parts in songs where you're like, really? Like, I don't know. It's just like, there are a couple of lines that I'm like, that's not a very good line. There's a line where Percy, Annabeth, and Grover sing, like, we're 3 half-bloods. And I'm like, Grover's not a half-blood.
There's a lot of things like that where Grover sings things that it's like, but you're not.
That doesn't apply to Grover. There's a few things like that where it's like, that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote, like, Percy Jackson is not meant to be a single story.
No.
And that's the problem with the movie, both movies. And that's just a kind of little thing in the musical. I mean, they did their best at the end to wrap it up to be like Luke still gets away, and you still know he's working for Kronos, because what are you going to do? Defeat 2 bad guys? But, like, they kind of wrap it up as like, okay, now we're all going to go out into the world and stop them. But, like, the Percy Jackson books are very much supposed to be a series. And so it's very hard to, like, adapt it into a single story.
Yeah.
Interesting. I forgot to, like, bring this up. So in the book, Percy finds out that Luke was the thief because they're in the woods and it's revealed, whatever. Then Luke runs away and he sets, like, a giant scorpion on Percy.
I think a regular-sized scorpion, but a really poisonous scorpion.
Yes, and Percy almost dies, but he, like, makes it far enough back into camp, and they find him and whatever, and they heal.
Yeah.
But Luke's, like, far gone. In the play, they have this song. Luke sings his whole, like, villain monologue. They're circling each other, and they draw their swords. And all the other, like, 5 actors in the play are, like, on the upper level or on the sides or whatever, and they're singing backup vocals. But Annabeth runs out right before they, like, attack each other and is like, stop. And so they don't fight, and she is being like, don't fight. And Luke is kind of like, Annabeth, you know I'm right, whatever. And she's like, you're right. And she goes up to him, Luke, like, puts her hand on his shoulder, and then grabs his sword out of his hand and, like, pulls it away. So it's like, Annabeth steps in and saves the day. And then Percy goes up to her and is like, are you okay, whatever. And then Luke pulls out a dagger and stabs Percy in the back. And I was like, whoa.
That's intense.
Like, let's very literal backstabbing. And Percy goes down and Luke runs off and they're like, get Ambrosia, whatever. Because Percy just got stabbed in the back. And they save Percy. And then he's, like, waking up and Annabeth's like, seaweed brain. And he's like, wise girl. And they do an almost kiss because that's Yeah. Because obviously they don't kiss in the first book, but they get together, they kiss later. But so the musical hinted at that a little bit more than the first book does. They get interrupted because Grover comes running back in, and they're like, Grover, we're having a moment. And you're like, you're 12.
Yeah.
Go take a nap.
Go take a nap.
Eat your graham crackers. I don't know. So, there were, like, two questions I was going to ask at the end here, and then I'll wrap it up. I have no idea how long we've been talking. A long time. So, one is in the first chapter of Percy Jackson. This is another difference in the show. I have another thing. So, in the first chapter, and in the beginning of the musical, they're at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and they're looking at Greek stuff, and Chiron is still in disguise as a Latin teacher. And he's asking the class, like, who's Kronos, basically. In the musical, none of the kids answer, including Percy. Mrs. Dodds answers, and she's got the weirdest voice in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, Percy answers. He knows it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting when I was rereading the book. I was like, oh, right. Percy's, like, smart. He's just not good at school. Because he has dyslexia and ADHD, which we talked about in the last episode. But I just thought it was interesting that the musical chose not to have him know that, and I didn't really like that. Once I reread the book, I was like, I like that Percy knows some of these things.
Yeah, he's sort of like, why do I need to know these things?
Yes. So, Chiron asks the class, why does this matter in real life? Because the, like, mean girl is like, ugh, this is never gonna matter. And he's like, why does this matter in real life? Greek myth, basically. And Percy's kind of like, I don't know. And Chiron's like, well, you'll know soon.
Yeah, he's like, I expect more from you, Percy.
Yeah.
And Percy's like, what?
Why? So obviously in the book, like, it literally means it's gonna matter because Percy's the son of Poseidon. But I was gonna, for, I guess, our little pop quiz, I was gonna ask you, why does it matter in real life? Because I don't think Riordan would have put that line in there if he didn't have a, like, but also it actually matters.
When he asks him about Kronos and how does this have to do...
why does this matter in real life? That's what
I mean,
his
I think
question
it
is.
has to do with the familyness, like, you know, families are messed up and how do you deal with that? That's what matters in real life. Did your dad try to eat you? Did you murder him? Like, what do you do when faced in a situation like that?
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, it gets into, like, do you take up the battles of your parents? Mm-hmm. You know, I like in one of the, I don't know which book, the second book? I don't know. Percy ends up on the island with Calypso. Calypso is a character from myth who is in Odysseus, and she was the daughter of a Titan, and she sided with the Titans in the war, so she's punished by being trapped on this island. And he says something about, like, why did you side with the Titans? They're evil. And she's like, did you side with the gods because they're good or because they're your parents? And he's like, oh, I guess that's a good point. Because it is like, you know, Luke sides against his parents. Percy sides with his parents. You know, you decide where you stand, but sort of like you have to decide on your own, and families are weird. Like when your mom keeps texting you
Well, you're recording.
while you're recording a podcast because your little sister doesn't answer her and she doesn't have faith in your little sister's ability to function as a human being.
We're recording a podcast, Mom. Okay. Yeah, good answer.
I know.
Well, and, like, it speaks to how good the Percy Jackson books are and how, like, important these stories are that it is adapted into a musical 12 years later. Well, I guess it was adapted in 2014 first, which was 9 years later. But, like, the musical kept going for a few years. Like, you know, it's not as big as Harry Potter, obviously Harry Potter, like, has universal messages and everything, but, like, Greek myth has been around for a long time.
Well, I think it's a lot, the difference between, like, mythology, which are ancient religions,
Yes.
versus modern religions. You know, the ancient religions, that really what the gods are very human.
Yes.
They make mistakes and they have very human
It's
characteristics.
all lessons.
It's all lessons. It's all explanations as to why this weird shit happened. Well, because the gods did the things, you know. And it's all like, you know, people make mistakes and the gods punish you, or the gods make mistakes and still punish you, you know, or whatever. But it's like they're very human, and they're very much like normal people. They just have magic powers.
So that's all my notes.
Cool.
It's a good musical. Listen to it. What is in the history today? The history
Today's
of pop culture.
history of pop culture lesson. On August 10th, 1984, Red Dawn, starring Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, became the first ever PG-13 movie to be released in theaters. The film made the Guinness Book of Records for having the most acts of violence in any film up to that time. According to their calculations, 134 acts of violence occur per hour, which is 2.23 per minute.
Wow.
I read the synopsis, having never seen this movie. It sounds really intense and gruesome.
Yeah.
And I included that. This is what I picked because recently we rewatched all the Indiana Jones movies, and while Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is not rated PG-13, it brought about the rating of PG-13 because it was violent and gruesome, and they were like, maybe this is too much for PG, but like not enough for R. So Steven Spielberg actually worked with like the MPAA, and they created the PG-13 rating, and Red Dawn was the first movie to be released with the PG-13 rating.
And Temple of Doom is the worst Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, no, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the worst Indiana Jones movie. But when was the last time you watched Temple of Doom?
Yeah, rewatch Temple of Doom.
Because it's not good.
And think about it again. Because, if anything, Marion Ravenwood is still a great character, and Willie Scott is a horrible character.
Yeah, she's just
That's
the
the
worst.
girl. And the only thing redeeming in Temple of Doom is the character of Short Round, which is the little kid. Whereas, like, in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the only character that could really be, like, done away with is Shia LaBeouf. Everybody else is, like, a good actor and does, like, a good job.
But, like, his character's still, like, important.
Yeah,
to
it's
the
fine.
character
He's not,
development.
like, super annoying.
You
like,
can take Willie Scott out of Temple of Doom and nothing is different. She doesn't do anything.
She saves him that one time.
Whatever.
But I'm sure
This
he
is
could
a
have figured
whole
out
other
a way.
episode. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. If people listen, I
Yeah.
hope they do.
Follow us on social media and tell us what you think of the show. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/popculturepie, popculturepie.tumblr.com, and facebook.com/popculturepie. We also have an email. I don't know why you would email us, but if you want to email us, popculturepiecast@gmail.com. Donate to the Remarkable Singular Curious Patreon. That's patreon.com/RSC. And that's everything. I'm Shannon.
I'm Colleen. Here's looking at you, kid.